Everyone, I wanted to come on here before my chat with Sharifa Yasmin to let everyone know we did have some technical difficulties. There was a weird Zoom that was happening, um, but I do think that Sharifa's passion and dedication and sureness as an artist really, really came through. And we had a lively discussion about the industry. And don't worry, Sharifa and I are already discussing linking back up to finish our conversation because we didn't really get to wrap things up. But till then, I hope you enjoy the first part of my chat with playwright and director Sharifa Yasmin.
Please tell me.
Perfect.
Okay,
Okay.
I don't know what was going on, but this has been a journey, but we've arrived at the destination. We're good to go.
TV is a funny thing.
We got there. That's all that matters.
That really is. It's 2020. That's all we can really ask for.
Can't ask for much.
Well, everyone that is joining us, I will go ahead and jump right into introducing one of these directors that has been sort of going from one fellowship to another fellowship, going from theater to theater, really getting to know the regional circuit. And I will say it's been a while since I've seen a young director with so many fellowships. So I definitely want to know if you have any secrets. But before we go too deep, let me go ahead and introduce the wonderful Sharifa Yasmin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharifa Yasmin. I am a freelance director. And I use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently calling in from South Carolina because that's where the pandemic has taken us.
I love it. I love it. Well, I guess we'll start from South Carolina. You did not stay in South Carolina for college, or did you stay in South Carolina?
Did. So I go. It's really ironic because I really wanted to go to Ithaca College in New York.
Yeah.
And I got accepted, but I couldn't afford out-of-state tuition. And I really loved their theater department, but I couldn't afford it. So I ended up staying in-state because my family's Egyptian and moved to North Carolina when I was 3. And then when I was 12, we moved to South Carolina. So I had sort of been here ever since. And I had to go to a public college here in South Carolina because that's all I could afford. So I went to this small university called Winthrop University, which is on the border of South Carolina and North Carolina. And when I graduated, I started my first internship, which isn't listed in my buff of resumes because it was a audience services internship. So I called with older people for 8 hours a day, got yelled at. It was a very fun time for me. But this was in Vermont, of all places.
Okay.
And then after that, I moved to DC. I lived in DC for a year doing
Okay.
a with Theater J.
Okay. Yeah.
2014, which I love Theater J.
Yeah.
And it was just like a random production, marketing, like just everything they needed done, I did.
Yeah.
And then
Sounds like easy. Yep.
yeah, literally. But I couldn't like get any traction as a director. I couldn't get any work, and I all that was really available to me was assistant directing positions, and I didn't want to do assistant directing because I hated it. I wanted to be the person who was able to contribute to the room, and oftentimes directors don't know how to use their assistants, so I was just sitting in the corner watching, which there's so much to be learned from watching, but it was frustrating, it was hard, and I got a piece of advice back when I was in Vermont about self-producing, and they were like, oftentimes the only way you're going to be able to direct as an early career director, because I told them instead of moving to DC, I was thinking about moving to Charlotte, which was 30 minutes from a university, because I had more connections there, and self-producing. And they were like, honestly, I think you should do that. So I lived in DC for a year. I assisted. I did a bunch of interning, and I decided to move to Charlotte to self-produce. And at that point, the next 3 years between Charlotte and Charleston, I was self-producing readings, an occasional performance here and there if I could
Right.
get space and could afford it, because it was all coming out of my own pocket. I maxed out all
Yep.
my cards. And at that point, I applied to grad school because I thought that was the only way that I could get actual traction in my career. And
Mhm,
I applied to Paul University, and I got waitlisted from them. And I was just like begging to get off that wait list. I thought my career would go nowhere if I didn't get this grad school. And I loved DePaul's program. I just couldn't afford it, but I was like, it's fine. I'll take out grants. I don't care. I want to go to school because I want to be a director, and I don't know how because I can't break into theater. None of these theaters wanted to hire me. The only way I could do work was either interning or self-producing, and I was tired of it, and I didn't see a path from it. Never got off the wait list, which
Okay. So this is 2015,
2000.
This
It was 2016. So I didn't get off the wait list, and I was heartbroken, and I decided I was going to give up theater because it was just too much, and I wasn't able to see my path forward to actually breaking it in as a director. Because I don't tell you how hard it is to be a director. They always talk about actors. No one's like, yeah, it's pretty impossible to break into the regional theater scene. Sorry about it.
Yep.
No one tells you. And so I'm just like, I'm struggling. I'm over it. And I decided I was going to quit directing, and I was going to be like a production person for film. So I started taking courses at a local technical college for film production, and absolutely hated it. It was completely dominated by like cisgender, straight, white men, and I felt so uncomfortable and so out of place. And at the same time, a friend of mine, Jasmine Gunter, who's an extraordinary director, and she's currently a student at Northwestern for their directing MFA, we went to college together. And I had sort of mentored her in college because she was a couple years under me. And she found out through a mutual friend that I was like, I'm done with directing. I'm kicking it to the side. I've had it with theater. Burn it to the ground. And she called me, and she was like, hell no. So what you're going to do, what you want to do is not what you're going to do. And she sent me a list of fellowships. And she was like, I am going to make sure that you apply to every single one of these fellowships. And we're going to go from there. And so I was like, okay. So I started to apply to those fellowships. And at the same time, I like swallowed my ego. And I said,
Yeah.
I'm going to assistant direct because it's the only way I can get some credits on my resume from like actual theaters. So I assistant directed 6 shows that year in Charlotte. And yeah, it was insane. I was going from one to the other to the other. But I was like, let me just beef up this assistant directing because I only had 1 show at that point. And that was
And so were these all regional productions? Were these people that you knew that you were assisting?
this was the Charleston theater scene.
Okay.
Charleston theater scene is not the regional theater scene.
Okay.
Yeah, one theater here. It's an amazing theater, and I believe they're gonna become equity within the next 2 years. I need to double check. It's called Pure Theater, and Pure Theater is the only theater in Charleston that is doing regional work. They are producing Susan Laurie Parks, Ayad Akhtar, Young G. Like they are doing those works, but they're the only theater here. Most of the theater in Charleston is commercial theater. It's musical theater. It's theater that tourists will come and watch and have fun time.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I assisted 3 shows with Pure. And did a directing, they eventually let me sort of like craft my own directing fellowship with them while also assisting at one of the commercial theaters in town, which is a wonderful theater called Charleston Stage that does a lot of musicals. So I would go from stage managing The Royale by Marco Ramirez to, I mean, not stage managing, assistant directing, to assistant directing Avenue Q, which was a wild ride.
Right.
And I just did that for a year. I bounced between the 2, and then I applied to these fellowships that my friends sent me. And the one I really wanted was Actors Theater of Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
Equal parts assisting and directing. Because a lot of these fellowship programs are mostly just assisting and observing, which I truly don't believe that you learn as much through that. I think you can. My personal philosophy is you learn by the ability to apply theory. So I really wanted that one. And I applied for it, and I had an interview with Meredith McDonough. We had one interview and we hit it off, and I got off the call and I was like, it's either the best interview I ever had or the worst interview I ever had. Because I was so unprofessional. Felt like just talking to a friend, which those are the best ones, you know? But I felt
Right, right.
depressed. Like, how are they going to think I'm capable from this? Well, they did. And I got the apprenticeship. And from there, that just sort of like kickstarted my like career and my ability to break into the regional theater scene in a way that I hadn't experienced previous to that. And everything has been born from that.
But let me go ahead and give you a little room to brag. If you could please list off these fellowships that you've racked up.
Oh, there's a few. So the first one I said was with Pure Theater. It was a directing fellowship that they made with me, which was amazing. So then I got a directing apprenticeship, Actors Theater of Louisville, the Drama League fellowship for Hanger Theater, which I ended up staying in teaching at the Ithaca College. So that felt like very full circle.
Beautiful.
Right. I did a fellowship with Manhattan Theater Club where I assistant directed for Sahim Ali on The New Englanders. That was fall of last year. I did the fellowship with Jiva Theater where I assisted for Paron Yusufzada, who is a mentor to me and one of my like idols as a director. And it was my second time assisting with her. And then I also at the same time directed Shakespeare for the first time at Jiva Theater, not Jiva Theater, at a university close to Jiva Theater. I know I'm missing. Oh, I did a directing fellowship with Hypocrite Theater under the artistic director, Arpita Mukherjee, who is an extraordinary director. And she was the one who encouraged me to apply for Eugene O'Neill's National Directing Fellowship, which I then applied for. And now I am one of the national directors for Eugene O'Neill. I think that's all of them, I think.
That is.
There's a few.
So coming from DC, like a resume is like everything, and like count me impressed, I will say.
But you'll be surprised. It's still the doors that I break down. There's not a large difference for me. All those fellowships I've had, what they've offered me the ability to do is make connections and relationships. And that's what's sort of gotten me from the next gig to the next. But when it's just applying to a theater or like emailing out an artistic director, I still don't get a ton of interest. So it's one of the things that's been frustrating for me as a director in that, like, what more can I do at this point when I have, had all these fellowships and I have these people who really support my career and believe in my career. And they're the ones who are getting me these jobs. But I'm still, when I'm like just cold contacting all these theaters, I'm like, hey, I'm like really interested in the work you do and really interested in coming on. I'm still not getting that interest. So there's not a ton of merging of the two, which is really frustrating because it's like, how can we expect young directors to actually break into the industry if we're not taking chances on them?
Yeah, and the way that I try to explain it to people in the industry, because like I know actors, so many actors in my life. The way I see it, the way I put it, it's like trying to get into an equity theater. You unless you have the card or the credentials, it's like, whoa, who do you think you are? And it's like, well, I don't know where I was going with that, but
you need experience to get experience. That's
exactly. And going on what you were saying about having to create your own work, I had to do that because I needed room to fail. It was sort of like I got all these great opportunities early on, and then it was like, all right, now what? Giving myself the space to create binge has given me the room to fail, and for me, failure is exactly that thing that people that look like us don't usually get.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And I remember It's so interesting you bring that up, because that's been a conversation that I continue to have, like the ability to fail, and especially people like us having the ability to fail. And I remember when I was at Actors Theater of Louisville, it was the first time I was really pushed outside of my comfort zone in terms of the works that I was getting to do. So normally, and if you follow my work, you know, I tend to be very politically minded. I tend to gravitate towards contemporary dramas that are reflective of the experiences of what it means to be marginalized here in America. Those are the pieces that are really important to me. And because I have an ear for drama, I understand it, because that's my life. Like, I've been affected by being a trans Arab Muslim woman in this country, and my life has been marginalized because of that. So I understand those experiences as it relates to me, and I know how to bring authenticity to them. So those are the works I'm really impassioned by. The program that I was doing, the professional training company, did not prioritize those voices, and it was a lot of it was great. It was a lot of work by female artists, but it was tend to be white women, and it was like these, you know, sort of quirky comedies, which people think I do quirky comedies because I'm a quirky comedic person, but that's not me, and it's not the kind of work that I'm interested in. And not to invalidate it, because I think it's incredible and so needed. It's just not my particular cup of tea. And so I was being pushed to sort of do a lot of those pieces, and it was frustrating for me because I didn't know how to do them well, because I wasn't interested in them, and I was trying to like figure out how could I have investment so I liked them, and so I would do a good job. Because when I like a piece, when I feel passionate about a piece, I'm gonna turn it out. I'll let you know that right now. But if I don't, it's a train wreck. It's a mess. Do not buy a ticket. I'm not gonna have my mom fly out to see it. You know, like, I'll be honest, that Shakespeare piece I did, I loved doing it, but it wasn't reflective of my ability, you know? And I was failing. And that was hard for me because I had this similar experience. Like, I wasn't used to failing as a director. And it was really difficult for me, but I was really lucky. There was the woman who ran the PTC at this time. She said, Sharifa, if the best work of your career is going to be here at Actors Theater during your fellowship, then that's going to be a sad career. Like, you get to experiment here. You get to try things. And that was the first time I realized, I was like, oh wow, I do have this ability to like try and fail. And I needed it. And I learned a lot that year. It was really informative. The fellowship was intense. It was hard. It did a number on me. I could never do that again. But what I did learn from it was invaluable, because it made me realize like who I actually was as a director versus who I was trying to be. And it was because I was space in a way I hadn't been given space before. But there needs to be a larger conversations when we're talking about giving space to marginalized theater artists, because it's more than just asking for a seat at the table. You know, for me, that fellowship in particular was like, okay, I have a seat at the table, but this table doesn't fit me. This table, like, my chair is too short. It's raining outside. You know, like
they put me in the closet.
Literally, there's a draft overhead. I don't have any pencils. Like, it's one thing to have a seat at the table. It's another thing if the table does not fit you. And what's happening in the American theater scene right now, and what I've been trying to be really vocal about, is we are opening up opportunities for marginalized, I can speak as a director, for marginalized directors from different backgrounds, and not just the white men that have run the industry. However, we're not actually giving them the resources to succeed by understanding that we come from different worlds and we need different resources. Having the same resource, if you're going to treat me like a masculine white male director and have that expectancy for me to perform like that, or that's not going to happen. That's not who I am. And not saying that all directors who share that identity direct in a similar way, but just to say, I'm not authoritarian. I'm not masculine in my directing style. I'm not going to come into your room and tell you this is exactly what we have to do. I tried to do that. I tried to be that director. That's not who I am. I'm the director that if you ask me a question I don't know the answer to, I'm going to tell you, I don't know, but let's explore. And I had a male actor one time pull me aside, and they were like, Sharifa, it made me really uncomfortable when you said you didn't have the answer to that question. And I was like, you know what would have made me uncomfortable? if I gave you an answer, I didn't believe it. If
Yeah.
I led you astray because I didn't have the understanding within myself to know that I don't know the answer to this. And if I try to manufacture something, I'm going to mislead us. And so this idea that director always knows exactly what to do and how to do it is false. I'm going to fail. Like, I'm going to experiment and it's not going to work. And allowing us to have that ability in the rehearsal process and to share that with our crew and our cast and come from a collaborative standpoint and say, like, hey, we're a team, we're going to work together and we're going to figure out what works together. I don't have all the right answers, you don't have all the right answers, but together as a team we'll figure out what works best for us. So that me to completely transform my directing in a way that I think uplifts it and puts it on a pedestal. And I'm really proud of the director I am now.
It it seems that even though you've definitely grown through experiences, you've always it sounds like you've always known who you were, what your voice was. It seems that you've been very sure of if not your voice, at least your point of view. And let me, you're frozen
Hello.
right now.
Oh my God. Amazing. Amazing. I'm so sorry.
Oh
I
my
don't
goodness,
know if it's me or
that's
what.
you're
Why did I
good.
switch?
You're so good.
Um, to answer your question, uh, it's what's interesting is I've always known my vision. Like, I've
Okay.
always known the work that I want to do. That's been clear to me. That happened to me when I was a senior in college, and a professor, her name is Laura Doherty, who's an extraordinary director. She saw that I wasn't connecting with the pieces that we were studying in class, because we were learning like your theater 101s, you know, your Ibsen, your Chekhov. Let's talk about Greek theater, and none of it was reflective of me and my experiences. I couldn't connect with it, and I didn't know at the time. Like, I didn't have the understanding within myself to understand that, like, I did not like these plays because I did not connect with these plays. I just knew I didn't like them. And she saw that and she was like, hey, I'm going to propose with you an independent study for directing. And we're going to explore theater that's more reflective of the regional theater scene. And the very first play she gave me was In the Heart of America by Naomi Wallace, which is my favorite play. If anyone knows me, they know I will always talk about that play. It's my dream to direct that play. And it's an extraordinary piece that goes into everything under the sun. It talks about war, it talks about identity, race, gender, sexuality, everything that you can explore, it explores. And it does so in such unapologetic way. It's brutal, it's fierce. And I remember staying up late to read this play. It was like 3 a.m. when I finished it. And I just, you know, that moment when you see a good play and afterwards you're just like,
Yeah.
you need to take a breath. That's how
Right.
it is. And I was like, oh, this is the kind of plays I want to work on. Like, this. And then he introduced me to Disgraced and Butterfly, Ruined, Hurt Village, Intimate Apparel, In the Blood, all these plays that, like, I never even knew existed. I didn't know theater could be like this because I was never exposed to it. Never exposed in South Carolina. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I want to do. And so that, I had that clarity when I was a senior in college. What I still needed to learn was understanding who I was as a director. I knew work that I knew what my vision was, and I knew what I wanted theater to be able to accomplish, but I didn't know how I wanted to do that yet. And I didn't know how I wanted to do it yet. And it wasn't until going through these fellowships. And for me, there was a major difference between the fellowship I did at Actors Theater Louisville and the fellowship I did with the Drama League. I think I had like a month break between the two. And that fellowship, it was the first time people only knew me as Sharifa. I had transitioned at Actors Theater. And so I was finally allowing myself to embrace who I always was in a way that I had always tried to stifle. And here at this place, people only knew me as Sharifa. And when I was a director in the room, I was Sharifa. And it made all the difference in the world for me. That will always be my favorite fellowship I ever did, because it was the first time I ever felt like myself. And I found who I was as a director. I'm a director who, I'll let you know when I mess up. I will get the actors together and be like, hey, I misled y'all. I am sorry about that. Let's figure out how we can move forward. Like, that is the kind of director that I am, because I believe in working as a team. I don't believe I always need to have the answers. I don't believe I need to lead with a masculine style of directing. I'm going to be emotional. I'm going to have dumb blonde moments. I'm going to speak in memes the entire time. Like, I'm going to embrace myself as a director, because I know now the work I can accomplish when I do that. And the quality of my work since my transition, the difference between it is extraordinary. And it's all because I'm now comfortable in my skin in the rehearsal room. And now I not only know the kind of work I want to do, but also who I am and how I want to do it. And not for me, the greatest gift I've ever been given.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Do you think that, like, you do you think you being so sure of who you are now gives your productions something special, something different?
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
They do. One thing I've noticed is I make little cults now. With my pieces.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
because what's reflective of my work now is my desire to collaborate with every person in the room. I'm tired of being in rooms where there's one person who thinks they have the answer and no one else is actually allowed to work together to discover what is the best way forward. And for me, my work is so reflective of that now, that I'm like, hey, what do you think? How are we going to move forward? I have this idea. Where are you at? But now that every person feels that they are investing as much as I'm investing, which is a lot, they feel autonomy over the production, which means that they're excited to do it. They're passionate about doing it. They love being on stage. And the energy that adds to a performance, there's no other way. There's no... you can't buy it. You can't bottle that. It has to come out of how you work on the production. But you know the difference of a play when you go to see it and you're like, oh, those actors love what they're doing. Those actors love that they're on stage. And that's what I've been able to add to my performances now, because everyone feels invested. Everyone's like, this is my baby and I want to do the absolute best I can do. And that means the absolute world to me. When that happens as a director, like, there's no other feeling like it.
Ugh, ugh. How much do you miss that feeling?
Oh my God!
Yeah.
So much!
Right.
So much! This year has been like, I'm in therapy right now, trying to like
Yeah.
recover this loss, because it feels like a loss.
Right.
I'm so blessed and lucky that my career is my passion, is my love. It's when I'm in that room and I get to work with people and create this story of humanity with all of these people. That's my life. Like, theater is my life. So when you remove that, when that is gone, it's
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
what do I have now? I have South Carolina. That's what I got. So that's been rough for me to come to terms with that. I am very blessed that I have gone full circle in my grad school journey, and I'm starting Brown University for my directing MFA. Hopefully this next year. We're still figuring out when I'm going to start, but I am going at some point. And so I know I'm going to have that creative outlet soon, to an extent. And that's what's keeping me going. I'm like, August 2021.
Yeah.
2021.
Yep.
I know I'm going to be like at least studying theater. I'm going to be talking to people about theater.
Mm-hmm.
But right now I'm doing odd jobs here and there.
Yeah.
I'm directing right now for an incredible festival called Write It Out, which is through National Queer Theater and the Lark. And it's centering stories around HIV positive characters. And it's a series of 12 one-acts, or each around 10 minutes, 4 different directors, 12 different playwrights. And that, like, being in the room for that is extraordinary, because it's like, these works mean something. They're important. They're going to affect the people who watch it. So it's been nice to get these like little tastes of things, but there's no supplement to being in a room and working with your team and your actors and the natural stress that comes up from it. And I'll bitch about that stress, but I love that stress. I miss that stress. I hate bitching about my designers. I miss that. I wanna fight the designer about something. I miss that. Let's have a conversation with a stage manager. Where are my actors? I need
Yeah.
all the things that come with a show, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I need that. And it's been hard being without
Okay.
it.
Okay. Can I can I ask you to go to the beginning of this year before we knew anything was going to happen? Like, what were you doing at the beginning of 2020, planning out the rest of your year? Ooh, you might be a little glitchy right now.
Okay, great. Um, we'll make the internet connection last as long as it wants to. Uh,
You know.
so it's so funny that you asked that because for me, I think what's been the hardest thing about this year is that like it was the beginning of all the things, and I felt like a lot of my hard work was finally starting to pay off. And then the pandemic came and shut everything down, and that was heartbreaking. And I have, I try to allow myself the moment of like allow yourself to be selfish and like recognize what you've lost, because every time I tried to, I kept going back to like, well, everyone is in this position, everyone is losing everything, theater is shutting down, and it's hard not to recognize that and then to want to like throw aside like your personal investment in it. And so it's been really important for me to recognize like, no, I am heartbroken over these losses, and I'm allowed to like recognize that and live in that and accept that, because the only way I'm going to move forward is if I do. Um,
Oh, you froze up again. You froze up again.
as a trans Arab Muslim woman who's the daughter of an Egyptian immigrant, and it was one of the first times I got to direct a play that so connected with myself. And we were the 2 days before theater shut down. We had auditions. And I remember going into Dixon Place, which is where the show's gonna go, and we had this like wonderful set of auditions and met these extraordinary actors, and we were all set to move forward. And then 2 days later, we got the shutdown of, oh, it's not gonna happen.
Oh,
And
oh, what was that like? As take me there, please.
I can only take you there so much because we got shut down. What
So
happened
you
is
weren't even at the theater. It was like okay.
so we had auditions, and so we had auditions at Dixon Place at the theater, but then 2 days afterwards, and we had a month before we were going to go into rehearsals. That's when everything shut
Mhm.
down. I never actually got to really be there, which was heartbreaking because I was so excited to be at Dixon Place. I had
Yes.
did a reading there, and I was excited to be in the theater, and I had all these ideas about what we were going to do with the show. And we were right at the start of it. Like I had a call with the set designer because I had a wild concept I wanted to implement.
That's the space to do one of those. Yeah, yeah. Ooh.
And I never got to do it, and that was the heartbreaking part. So that
Oh.
that was hard, but we ended up doing a
Yeah.
reading for the play, which was so wonderful to be a part of. But at that point, I had also was in talks with Eugene O'Neill about their directing fellowship, which of course massively changed because of the pandemic. So, I haven't been able to be as involved with the fellowship as we would be if there wasn't for a pandemic. So that's been a loss. And yeah, just a lot of conversations I was having with theaters where I was like just on the cusp of like getting hired, that all went away. It was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. And it was heartbreaking for everyone because I feel like every single theater person experienced that. And it's just, you feel powerless because there's nothing you can really do. You can do Zoom readings, and I love being able to use a medium of Zoom to connect with people from different areas. And I think it's wonderful for working on workshops, things. But it's just not the same of being in a rehearsal room. You know, theater is not meant to be digital. Theater is meant to be live.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And
we're coming to
I mean,
terms with
like,
that.
yeah.
Like if anyone watching and you're able to, December 1st, the Write It Out Festival, it's this play about this trans person who is navigating who's navigating Grinder as a trans person. And that for me, I'm like, okay, we know this experience. So it's just it's extraordinary piece, and that has been really incredible though. And that's what has come out of the pandemic, is that I feel like right now a lot of voices that haven't been heard before are being catered to have platforms so that we can speak, so we can tell our stories. And there's a lot of theater festivals that haven't been able to do these sorts of festivals because not everyone is in one location. Now they can. Because they have the ability to outreach. So that's one thing I do hope stays with us once we, hopefully at some point, if we ever do, move past the pandemic, that we still take advantage of that, because it's quite wonderful. I mean, to get to have trans theater festivals that are happening because you're able to connect with trans artists all over the country, and they don't all have to be in New York or they all have to be in Boston, you know, that has been extraordinary, and I hope that stays with us.
Do you, when we get through the pandemic, what do you think is going to be the biggest change for the industry?
Oh, God, that's such a hard question.
Right, though, right.
One,
We've reached that point of the interview.
one, like, you know, let's have this conversation. Theater is already, before the pandemic happened, financially struggling because audiences are continuously decreasing because a lot of audiences tend to be older, and, you know, older people eventually. So we are losing audiences and losing income. And that was already
And no one
happening.
cares about theater.
And no one cares about theater. Like, I mean, just the conversations I'm trying to have with friends who exist completely outside of theater, to be like, oh, your idea of theater is not what theater is. And theater exists off of Broadway. Like, theater is not just Broadway. Like, how do you not know what regional theater is? We have these conversations about social justice, but the work that's actually being done in that area is in theater. And people don't know. Slave play, for all of the controversy that it absolutely dragged up, what it did, and this has happened before, but not often, it took politically minded theater and put it on a commercial stage. And for people who are so affected by slave play, like, these kinds of plays are happening all around the country all the time. You just haven't opened yourself up to the exposure to them. That wasn't the question you asked me, but I felt it was important to go on that diatribe.
Definitely, I'm all for it, because this is actually the second time that slave play has come up in the just 4 episodes of this show. So like the people that I am bringing onto the show, along with myself, like, we feel something different in slave play. I feel like for us as performers, actors, directors of color, even if we haven't seen it, what we were hearing about it was different than other things we've heard about Broadway plays. And that was beautiful, and that's exciting for me as a person of color. I'm so ready.
I completely agree. And I think what was really interesting for me, slave play has such an interesting space in my life because I had just finished directing The War Boys by Naomi Wallace at Hangar Theater. And The War Boys explores toxic masculinity through the eyes of these three men. And it is a feminist piece, and I will defend that till this day. But it's a really hard piece to start. A lot of, like, really dark, brutal things happen. It's a brutal play. And the reaction that play created was a very similar reaction to how a lot of people felt about slave play. And so I just finished directing the show. I just moved to New York, and all these people are talking about this play like they just talked about the play I had just directed at this, small regional theater. And I was like, oh, what? They never talk about this. This ain't what? This ain't Bye Bye Birdie. So I spent $300 on a ticket, and I'm starving artist, but I was like, no, I have to go see the play. I have to go see the play. So I spent $300, and I sat in the second row and I watched Slave Play. And
yeah.
And that last scene, and the thing about like the mirrors where you're watching yourself watch this thing, which I'm not going to say like read the play, but like and then you're like trying to like decipher what you just watched in your head and trying to figure out like, wait, was that wrong? What is going on? Leaving that theater, I remember I was walking back to my apartment. This was when I was still in New York, and I lived on 46 in between 9th and 10th. So I was fairly close to the theater, and I was walking back, and I was like, I have never had these feelings leaving a Broadway play. Never in my life. In my life. Never have I had these feelings. And what I really hope people take away from Slave Play's impact on Broadway is that these pieces can be successful, but they're also really important. And we need to invest in them on a mass stage. And like the idea that shows like this can't be far commercial says like what we as humans are investing as important. And yeah. How theater has changed, not talking about the financial position that we're going to be in, just talking about like theater in itself, that people take that understanding of these sorts of plays and these sorts of voices need to really be given space on a mass scale, and that we as people need to invest in seeing them, because if we don't, we can write these extraordinary pieces and they're just not going to be seen, and that's the most heartbreaking thing.
Yeah, for me, sometimes I'm the white guy in the room every now and then. Like that happens sometimes. But knowing that knowing what that feels like makes me want to diffuse that situation sometimes. And for me, hearing about a play like Slave Play, for me as an artist of color, I'm excited. But for me as a I guess a white person, that's proof to me that there is still places for people that are white in predominantly Black or BIPOC stories. Like, we still see people that don't look like us, even if white people don't. Like that.
That's so large too, because I'm also white passing. I'm Arab American, but I'm very light skinned, and I have to be aware of the privilege that I hold in the space, and I love when I'm in a space and like I have that experience too, because that for me is telling me that like we are creating a space for like people that don't normally get to be in positions of power get to be in positions of power. About it is when we're in a room all white people, we know it, we feel it. I remember being in a production meeting at Actors Theater of Louisville for Dracula, and there was 40 people in that room, and there were only 2 people of color, and both of them were white passing. I was one of them, and there was another. But you feel it, and you feel out of place. And for me, one of the reasons I've been really passionate about being a director, and specifically a director as a person in power, is so that I have influence over who gets to come into the room, and who is giving, and storytelling, and who gets to tell those stories, how that influences how a story is told. I'm never going to be apologetic. I'm always going to prioritize women of color for any piece, for any leading role, because I need to be able to see an experience that I, as a director, share with.
Yeah.
And you know, I've had people have conversations with me about like, well, I know you really want a person of color in this role, but like, can we cast a white person because that's going to be easier for them, and they think it's going to be more successful. And I hate having these conversations, and you have to bite your tongue because I need to be invited back to direct the next show, and I have to say, you know, as respectfully as possible. I think that if we do have this role told in this way, it's not actually going to tell the story that our production is looking to tell. And you have to cajole them and fight for it. And
Yeah.
it's exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting, but it's why I became a director, so that I can influence who gets to actually tell these stories. And so that I don't have to have the experience of being in a room with all white people. As a director, you're never going to catch me dead in a room that
Yeah.
I'm the only. So
It's so interesting hearing the way you put it, because the way I see it is that for me, racism and all of the other isms, all of the other branches of white supremacy, for me, that you froze. I don't know if you're listening.
For more information on Sharifa Yasmin, visit sharifayasmin.com.
Binge.